What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into Casa Es Su Casa on American Freedom Radio. Shout out to the American Freedom Radio crowd. It has been some time since we last talked. Life has been a little bit crazy. We also had that holiday break. The last week, though, we were working on, finalizing and doing our final walkthrough on Just Inform. And this broadcast is brought to you by Just Inform. Come register right now and join the evolution of social media. So far, we've managed to bring a few hundred people in just a couple of weeks, just under a couple of weeks. And the reason that they're there is because, well, people are tired of the Facebook censorship. People are tired of the YouTube censorship. People are tired of the Twitter censorship. I'm not joking, people. My friend H.A. Goodman was going to have me on his show to promote the platform for Just Inform. And when he tagged me into the post, literally just saying, hey, I'm going to have Niko on to, at this time and day, I went to my other Twitter account to retweet it. And it said that there was sensitive content, and so I couldn't see it. Yeah. So, they're going through great lengths to prevent the truth from being spread. But even more so, they're going to great lengths to suppress conversation, to suppress, profound interactions. And they're trying to push people, will really keep people in this world of vanity that, where we ignore all the world's problems, where we ignore what's going on with Syria, when we ignore what happened in California, when we, with the clear election fraud that took place this weekend, when we ignore these things, or when we're allow ourselves to ignore these things, it's usually because of the distractions and really the conditioning that platforms like Facebook and Twitter were created for. So Just Inform gets away from that. We're not a big, funded by a bunch of big corporations. When we do decide to open up for other companies to invest, they will have to be, progressive. Well, I say progressive, I mean they have to treat their customers like they have some sense. They have to treat their employees like they have some sense. Minimum a livable wage according to your state. You can't tell me, oh yeah, we pay $15 an hour in California. That's not a livable wage in California. You can't have a lot of human rights violations, things like that. That's the kind of platform we want to be, because our ultimate goal is to shift the culture. And, we hope that you join us in that journey. I do want to give a special shout out to Tim, my partner, Tim Black, and Suzanne Murphy, our other managing partner. Also to our contributors, our currently verified contributors, Caitlin Johnstone, who many of you are familiar with, and Elizabeth Lee Voss, who is the editor-in-chief of Disobedient Media and also is a journalist. Most of you all will be familiar with her work with Julian Assange and that vigil that she'd helped put together recently with Susie Dawson. She also covered a lot of the Seth Rich case and still does, and a number of other important issues like the DNC fraud lawsuit. And so all of those are a few of our verified contributors. If you are looking to grow your own personal brand, make sure that you register and that you reach out. And then when we're allowing, or when we put our open application process, which should be in about a month or so, hopefully less time. If the platform fills up a lot more than it has been before, then we'll go ahead and open it up earlier. This is an opportunity for you to grow your visibility without having to deal with Facebook, which is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, if they're not censoring you, they're forcing you to pay just to be seen. The organic outreach on Facebook and Twitter and even Instagram has been killed, and that's by design. The thing about Facebook, which makes it uniquely nefarious in this scenario, is that if you are talking about anything political, if you are perceived to be a political public figure, in any way, form, or fashion, they can deny you the ability to promote your videos. They can deny you, which is crazy, right? But they can, and I've seen it. It's happened to a lot of progressive candidates. So, justinform.com, JUSTNFORM. Once again, JUSTN as in Nancy, FORM.com. Check it out, and add me as a friend on there. You don't have a limit to your friend requests. So, with that being said, the first thing that we're going to talk about today was something that I could not really believe my eyes when I saw. The Washington Post reported a couple of days ago that the DNC is considering blocking superdelegates from voting in the first presidential ballot. David Weigel, who actually I do not like him, but hey, whatever. The Democrats are meeting in Providence, Rhode Island, which is a really strange place to meet for anybody, this weekend to advance changes to the presidential primary, hoping to end the bitterness that followed the 2016 election with an emphasis on, quote unquote, hoping, as in they're not really sure that it will end. I can give them a clue as to why it won't end. I'm glad that you're talking about ending you're talking. I want to be very clear about that. Talking. Not doing, talking. They've been talking about the superdelegate process for like 2 years now, so we'll see where that goes. But also, and more importantly, you didn't address election fraud. You haven't talked about addressing election fraud. In fact, you're trying to pretend like election fraud doesn't exist. When anyone who paid any amount of attention to that California primary, you know, as well as I do, there was a lot of fraud. And we'll go into that a little bit deeper for any of my AFR, American Freedom Radio people who did not get that reporting from me this weekend or on the night that we live streamed the primary. But it says that the push for changes, which began nearly 2 years ago, like I said, they've been talking about this for 2 years, but it began nearly 2 years ago at the Democratic Philadelphia Convention, concerns rules revisions that proposed by a Unity Reform Commission and vetted by the Standing Rules and Bylaws Committee. The most high-profile battles have come over the role of superdelegates, you think? Senator Bernie Sanders, who failed to get the Democratic presidential nomination. You see how they say, well, that's that Washington Post, man. He failed. I'm gonna correct that for them. Is that fine with you all? Senator Bernie Sanders, who was cheated out of his presidential nomination at the expense, the time, and the money of the voters, has campaigned to end the voting power of most superdelegates and is keeping the issue alive, as he should. I wish he would address election fraud also, or at least I wish he would address it more substantively. And Bernie Sanders makes a fantastic point. He said, you had superdelegates voting for Hillary Clinton in states that I had won pretty handedly. That's his Bernie's not really, he tries not to be cocky. And so when he says stuff that is like legitimately patting himself on the back, he's so passive about it. What he meant to say was, you had these superdelegates voting for Hillary Clinton in states where I whooped her ass, where she had 4, 5, maybe 6 people come out to her events, and oh, by the way, they were paid to be there. Even in these states, these precincts, these areas where she cheated, it's pretty clear she cheated. Voter registrations were switched. Voter registrations were dropped. I still beat her, and the superdelegates still voted for Hillary Clinton. I know that one of these places was Michigan, definitely. But yeah, so Bernie, stop being nice. You beat her ass several times, several states where superdelegates just decide to do their own thing. So now there is agreement amongst Tom Perez and our people, and a lot of even the Clinton people, that say we should reduce the number of superdelegates, not just when they vote, but also the number, which I don't think is insane. I think that's smart. So Perez and the Democratic National Committee, they gave them a preview Tuesday of the potential compromise, which pretty much says that the superdelegates would get no vote on the first ballot at the next Democratic convention. While they could endorse whomever they wanted, and they are, they do that anyway, and while they would be able to attend the convention and vote on the matters of like 700 elected officials and party leaders who currently have automatic voting status, but they would not be able to vote on the presidential nominee unless the contest got dragged to a second ballot. Of course, most of the Democrats hated it. Even the people on the Unity Commission, which makes sense to me, weren't exactly satisfied. Now, I am in the camp of people who do believe that, hey, you know what? Life is a compromise. Politics is about compromise, and little victories count, and they usually lead to bigger victories. So I do want to acknowledge that this is indeed a victory for the Unity Commission. I've been staunchly critical of them in the past, and still am. Mostly of the people who are on it, and I'm not sure what their goals are. And a lot of people feel that way, but this is an improvement. But there are a lot of problems with that. Like, why do you have super delegates at all? Why? I mean, we know why. The super delegates were legitimately created to make sure that people like Bernie Sanders could not win because of the situation that had happened with Henry Wallace. If you all don't know who Henry Wallace is, he was FDR's former vice president, and for the first and the only time in history, he was replaced as vice president for FDR's last term. In other words, in the middle of a presidential term, or a tenure, I should say, Henry Wallace, who was the vice president, was poised to be the president after FDR passed away. He was poised to win the convention. And for all intents and purposes, he did win the convention. And what happened was that they actually voted to adjourn the meeting. It was all nays when they voted to adjourn, but they did it anyway. They adjourned the meeting. From there, it was bad. They paid off everybody. Henry Wallace was, at that time, considered to be the Bernie Sanders of his generation. Extremely popular. And that was so impactful, people. Understand that these rules are in place for a reason. And that reason is because that election, what happened to Henry Wallace, was so impactful that it led to Truman getting in office. So it led from someone who walked around the country in the 40s and the 50s talking about ending segregation, saying that all people should be treated equal. And that was one of the first things that he was going to do, saying that not only should we be ending racism at home, but abroad as well. He was openly calling for the end of colonialism, calling out the British Empire, saying that we should not, like, while we were in World War II, he was on record saying that we shouldn't be helping out the British Empire, like helping them maintain their colonies. We need to be, they're no more free than people who are segregated in the States. He believed staunchly in holding corporations accountable. He wanted to make sure that the corporations who invested in Nazi Germany were held accountable. So this guy, if he would have stepped in office in the 40s like he was supposed to, because obviously, as you all know, FDR died. Segregation ends 20 years earlier. Redlining potentially never happens. You see what I'm saying, people? These massacres that happen later on over the next 20 years people are held accountable for them. Legislation starts getting introduced and by the president at that time, who was progressive. That's why super delegates were created, because it would have the apartheid South Africa, if you didn't know, got their plans for the apartheid from the United States of America. Yeah, Bay of Pigs doesn't happen. And what I mean by that is that Fidel Castro isn't demonized simply because he will not abide by the American sugar cartel that was brought on by Western imperialism and capitalism and greed. Nelson Mandela doesn't end up in jail. In fact, we don't even know if South Africa ever becomes what it is today. I mean, there is a whole host of things that would have happened. And that, I mean, like I said, Bernie Sanders isn't perfect. He isn't perfect. We know this. But his imperfections they don't outweigh the benefits of somebody who has great intentions, a great understanding of policy, and really genuinely wants the best for everybody, wants to hold corporations accountable. He's not extreme one way or the other. He says, I still don't get the idea that it's like, he says he wants single payer health care. How dare he? Oh my God, that's insane. We'll never be able to survive despite all these countries already able to survive because of this. I don't know if you're a corporation, for example, and this is, there's statistics to back this, but I even know a CEO right now who was talking about how beneficial it was to make sure that her employees had adequate health care, because when you can take care of yourself, you come to work. When you can afford your medication, you come to work. When you can afford regular checkups and catch things early, you come to work. This is a fact. When you're healthier, you're more productive. And that's an extreme for some people. They think it's totally impossible. But these are possibilities. But people, not us, the 0.001%, they get hurt by things like that. The insurance companies would, oh my God, what do we do? All 1,000 of those jobs. Oh God. The United States complains about the job industry when it comes to stuff like that all the time, people. But this is the same United States that sent out hundreds of thousands of jobs during NAFTA. And they will sit there and look at you in the face, well, we can't do single payer. We're going to kill 1,000 jobs. But hey, in the name of capitalism, we'll send those 100,000 of jobs overseas to somebody else just to skirt by regulations. So yeah, that's why superdelegates were created by the Democratic Party. Because Republicans, they accept like 80% of the super PAC money, so they're going to do what they're told to. That's like, I don't like stereotype and generalize, but the establishment Republicans are they've been pretty consistent with what they'll do. McCarthyism was started by establishment Republicans. So the FBI was headed by establishment Republicans forever. The CIA was headed by establishment Republicans in the deep state that were all Republicans. And then, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton they're Democrats. They're Democrats, right? But they're not really on the left. They're Republicans. They started Confederate Flag Day. So, yeah, the deep state will be able to operate with Republicans in office, but the point of controlled opposition is just to be that. Create the illusion like you're in control of something, but then at the last second, take it away from them, but give them hope that if they do more next time, then maybe kinda, probably, not really, something different might happen. The only legitimate election that I can think of, funny enough, and when it wasn't even legitimate, because Obama even was about to challenge her for election fraud, and vice versa. Hillary's campaign was going to challenge him for election fraud, but I think it was only because Obama was going to do it. That was the only legitimate election, was when Obama came out of nowhere and utterly destroyed her. And it was out of nowhere. I'm not joking when I say out of nowhere. Y'all probably don't remember. If you're young, you probably don't remember. If you're older, I don't know if you remember. Let's recap. Obama had no chance, if you all recall. He was a black guy. His name was Osama. Barack Obama. He was from Kenya. All right. You know, they couldn't verify his birth certificate, and then it did. And it was, I mean, the only thing that saved him was his charisma and how anti-Hillary he was. Well, and the fact that he got 93% of the black vote in the Democratic primary election. And that threw everybody for a loop. Because remember, people forget Jesse Jackson ran for office and they kept him out. They kept Jesse Jackson out. But Obama was so overwhelmingly popular, and John McCain had the whole veterans thing going for him. And they did not want to deal with another 8 years of Republican domination, because jobs in the Democratic Party get lost, funding gets reduced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You lose momentum. People think you can't win. And so they knew that Hillary is not a staunch different from, like, she's a war hawk. They vote pretty much down the line on all issues. She's just not different enough than John McCain. So that was actually the one time a legitimate election happened in the Democratic Party, in my opinion. It's been quite some time, at least in my lifetime. Super delegates were specifically created to cheat. So they need to be abolished. This is a step in a positive direction. However, I do not believe that they'll actually allow the vote to be called the way it should be called in the first place. Get what I'm saying? So if you were at the Philadelphia convention, the DNC convention, and you know what I know, which is that Bernie Sanders did not only win once with the head count. Bernie Sanders did not only win twice with the head count. Bernie Sanders won 3 times. No, excuse me, won twice. Then the third time, they said he won, but then Hillary won. Like, the delegates at the convention, somehow the numbers weren't the same. People were like, I mean, delegates weren't even showing up to the head count like Hillary's delegates weren't. They're like, hold up, we gotta wait for them. If you were a delegate and you don't show up to the head count, you're actually gone. You're supposed to be done. That's it. Your vote doesn't count. They were hiring people to be delegates last minute for Hillary Clinton. So the idea to me that super delegates, just because they can't vote in the first part of the Democratic convention and they can't vote in the second, doesn't mean much to me. However, as long as they keep their damn mouths closed and shut the hell up during the election, the electoral process, then I'm fine with it. But don't go waving your super delegate stick across the room during the election. Because y'all cheated. Man, look, when I tell y'all we barely knew what a super delegate was before this year, and Bernie Sanders became such a threat to that establishment that we saw stuff that we've never seen before. Like with Iowa. The Iowa caucus. Big election. Everybody thought Bernie was going to get smacked. Iowa caucuses, at the end of the election, Bernie had won by the skin of his teeth. Obviously, it wasn't a huge deal. The delegates were split, but it was just symbolic of how impactful he had been up until that point. And it was also emblematic of just how the establishment was wrong. They were very, 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 very wrong. So when I saw the weirdest thing that I have ever seen during an election in my lifetime, which was the numbers, the percentage jumped out of literally nowhere. Because God forbid, right? God forbid that the reports come out the next day and they say Bernie Sanders beats Hillary Clinton in the first primary election. It's a little bit easier because it wasn't just about Ohio. Obviously, it's about the precedent going forward. It's about the precedent being set in the Midwest. Saying like, yeah, Bernie Sanders is about to dominate there. And he did, in fact, dominate there. Or the Rust Belt, I should say. Because he won Michigan, too. You all know he won Wisconsin. I think Hillary barely won Pennsylvania. But the superdelegates, they were like, look, this just in. The Hillary Clinton got the superdelegate vote, so she technically wins by a percentage. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. When did these superdelegates start getting counted so early? And what the hell is a superdelegate? Second of all, like that was like I've never heard of it before, because superdelegates didn't even have to really vote in the Obama-Clinton election because Obama had won it so handily. And when they did vote, it didn't really have a huge impact. So, yeah. Next item on the list. I don't know if y'all know this. California did just have their midterm elections, right? A little screwy. They just had their primaries. They have this weird system called the jungle primary. Apparently it's extremely unique to the midterms because California's constitution all of a sudden doesn't apply whenever the general election comes around. For those of you who do not know, California does have a law that says that it can absolutely not ever be a closed primary state. It has to be open for everybody, which is why they have the jungle primary process, which says that the top two candidates get to run against each other, no matter what party affiliation, no matter what your legacy is, no matter if you're going for the U.S. House, U.S. Senate, or the State House, State Assembly, or the State Senate. That's awesome. It's the best version of ranked choice voting that I've seen so far. However, like I said, it's only applicable, apparently, during midterms because, as you all recall, California was closed primary central during the presidential elections. By the way, shout out to Kenneth Mejia. In case you don't know, Kenneth Mejia did place top 2 in his race. Therefore, he will be in the runoff in the general election in a one-on-one bout against his Democratic opponent. What that means is his opponent has to debate him. It will be like they can't just pretend like it isn't a race now. And Kenneth Mejia, if he wins this election, people, he will be the first Green Party candidate in history to sit in a nationally elected office, which would be incredible, would be insane. I want to give another shout out to Eric Lane. I always call him Eric Lane. Eric Fame, independent out of California. Guy didn't have any party apparatus. He ran on fighting human trafficking, and for anyone who follows my channel, you know how serious of an issue that is to me. But also, it's an extremely controversial issue, and he also was on an anti-war platform. So, and he's running for state office, and he finished top 2 with nobody knowing who he was. And I'm going to make a point here, by the way, about those two things. And also, finally, I do want to give another special shout out to Maria Estrada, the firecracker, fighting against Anthony Rendon, the single-payer slayer. That is the head of the assembly who killed single-payer health care in California just because they didn't exactly expressly say how they would fund it, even though, not even how they would fund it, but really how they would allocate the funds, which obviously would just be discussed and addressed amongst the assembly. You get what I'm saying, peeps? So Maria Estrada, in a surprising turn of events, this is her first election. She will now be in the runoff because she ran as a Democrat, people. She ran as a Democrat. So she will now be in the runoff against Anthony Rendon, giving her a lot of attention that she well deserves. So I had to give a shout out to them. But why am I talking about the California primary? Well, I am talking about the California primary because they did something weird. In my opinion, it's weird. I know what they think. I know what I think. I'm gonna give you both of the opinions, right? And we're gonna go from there, and you're gonna see who sounds probably like they make more sense. Oh shit, I just saw something on my YouTube live stream that said that Tim Black just spoke with the DNC member Bob Mullahand. Bob thinks that the Green Party is funded by Putin. Man, I promise you the Green Party would be doing a lot better if it was being funded by Russia, because boy, they are hurting for money. But it said it aims to hurt Dems by cutting superdelegates. Bob blames Jill Stein. When the hell did this interview happen? Because I totally missed that. I gotta call Tim. That is hilarious. Now, here's what the Dems think is gonna happen, right? Because California's a big state. California, in the Democratic primary specifically, is an important state. Why? I mean, think about it. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Ray Lutz and the corruption that went on during 2016 primaries, but it was a lot. Like, they're still in the process of fighting election fraud cases. Some of them have been proven true. Others are still, being discussed. But Ray Lutz is a good, if you don't follow him on Facebook, I strongly encourage you to do so. But Ray Lutz is a great point man for keeping up with election fraud in California. But California has decided, literally just a couple of days ago, that they are going to move the presidential primary elections up to March instead of June. The reason why is because by June last year, the article tried to say Hillary and Trump were both the presumptive nominees. No, that wasn't the case. In fact, that's never been a thing. Trump, however, was the presumptive nominee because he beat everybody's ass. It wasn't even close. To my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but Trump did actually get the required number of delegates on his team without having to rely on any superdelegates from the Republican Party to seal that nomination up well before the Republican convention. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Hillary, however, was still in the race, where by the end of that race, like by the time we got to the convention, she didn't have enough delegates by herself to claim the Democratic nomination. And the delegates, obviously, go to the convention and they speak amongst themselves, yada, yada, yada. And then because they were not able to find a solution during the primary election, they find it at the convention. Therefore, she was not the presumptive nominee. And in fact, this is the first time that a candidate had not clinched the Democratic primary with the amount of delegates necessary that candidate was ever announced as a presumptive nominee before the most important, populated, and, fruitful state as far as delegates is concerned in the entire country. Made no damn sense. It was a lie. It was to core. It was so that people wouldn't question what was about to go down. And we all knew what was about to go down. Okay? So, California moves. They moved their primary earlier. And I actually think that they thought that that was a fantastic idea. They thought that that was an amazing idea. Because Democrats are not. Remember what I tell y'all about these strategists, people? They're not that smart. They're not as smart as people think they are. Because you think they get paid big bucks because they're intelligent. No. People, no. Do you know why they get paid the big bucks? Because Democratic strategists aren't actually strategists. It's dropped now because of the progressives, who have been winning recently. 91% of all elections in this country have been determined by who spends the most money. So what that means, essentially, is that these strategists are not strategists. They don't understand the polity. They don't understand the people that trying to get vote. Like they run these bullshit polls to coerce people into voting for their candidate, but they never show you the real polls. And outside of that, they're just fundraisers. That is what they do. They're professional fundraisers, because they're not strategists. They're consultants. They're consultants. They consult with big ass donors, because a lot of those consultants are also lobbyists. What a surprise! What a surprise! So they consult. So they're not smart at all. They're smart enough. No, they're not smart, because you would think they would be smart enough to at least have survival instincts kick in, but it seems as if they aren't. And so they're moving up the California primary, because all this stuff happened within 1 week. So they moved the California primary up, and then they try to blackball Bernie Sanders and really whoever else they want to, because they made a rule change saying that you have to be an active member of the Democratic Party if you're going to run for the election, which means you have to pronounce that you are a Democrat, which is kind of weird, because I think that they're trying to say that Bernie Sanders has to pronounce that he's a Democrat, rather than a Democratic Socialist, but that is not the same thing. Political theory, is not necessarily the same thing as government theory. It's not. It's whenever we're referring to Bernie Sanders as a quote unquote Democratic Socialist, what do you usually think of? What is he talking about? He says, I want to allocate the funds that we have being overspent in the military by the military industrial complex and being, pretty much consumed and then burned by our legislature. And I want to make sure that we allocate that to the people who are paying these taxes to make their money work for them. That's an economic stance, that's what he's referring to when he says Democratic Socialist. But even more so than that, Vermont doesn't have voter registration. Bernie Sanders is an independent, yes. He probably would run as an independent regardless, yes. However, he couldn't register as a Democrat even if he wanted to. So to get around that, they said, hey, you have to be working for the party. He caucuses for the Democrats already. You know this. But the Democrats are idiots. So what they're saying is essentially, if they feel, which is what I have been telling people forever. By the way, Bernie Sanders has worked with the Democratic Party long enough to at least know how they think. He worked with the Democratic Party to know that they are going to cheat, because he's addressed election fraud. Jane has addressed election fraud more than a few times. However, he couldn't go, he wasn't going to go out falling on the sword for what? It wouldn't have done anything. He would have just been the crazy old Bernie, just like they did with crazy old Ray McGovern and crazy old Henry Wallace. You get my drift? So because he's worked with the party enough, he knew, hey, I see where the tide is turning. There's no way in hell I'm going to be able to win this. And I've said that before. You know, it's, if you understand politics, you understand people, you just kind of know there was no chance he was going to win that. I knew that when I started the DNC fraud lawsuit, which is why I started it. Well before the Democratic National Convention. Because I knew what was going to happen. So because of that, another thing that you once again have to remember about Bernie Sanders is that he never just runs in a race and then just quits. He'll run in a race, lose the race, and then come back and whoop your ass. Ask Vermont. Ask any of those Republicans or Democrats in Vermont how it went the second time they tried to run against Bernie Sanders, or the third time they tried to run against Bernie Sanders. Because he learns the playing field, he sees the tactics, and then he uses it against them. He's a chess player. That's what he does. So if he did not follow the rules that were established in the contract that he had signed when he first said that he was going to run as a Democrat, if he did not follow the rules by endorsing Hillary Clinton, they would have disallowed him from running. And as you can see, the Green Party, unfortunately, does not have an apparatus good enough at this point to support a national level candidate. Has nothing to do with money, somewhat to do with infrastructure, but 80% of it is because they have not addressed election issues in this country. Period. I saw something earlier today. Somebody had commented this, and it was like, damn, I can't believe I've never even thought about that. Because I like the Green Party. I like the people in the Green Party for the most part. Some of y'all are outrageous, but hey, it makes you no different than any other party from that perspective. But the Green Party has been a party for a long time. The Green Party has been subjugated to all types of electoral tampering, legal and illegal. Even this year, or this past election, we saw Jill. She had the Green Party raised record amounts of money. They had record amounts of individual donations, record amounts of rally attendance. And Jill Stein somehow didn't get over 1% of the vote because they cheated her. Same thing with Gary Johnson. They cheated him. Why? Because how do they get more federal funding? Oh, yeah, as long as you get, all you have to do is poll 5%. That's it. Who controls the polling? They even control the polls they want to release. So given all of that's messed up, right? The way that the two parties treat the Green Party is messed up. But here's where you gotta hold the Green Party accountable. How long have you known about election fraud, Green Party? Have you tried to to fix the laws that prevent you from entering that debate stage? Did you try to fix those? Not during the election, but in the interim, so that it doesn't look like political games. So that it looks like you're trying to make a change instead of just trying to raise money just to lose. Have you taken your state apparatuses and started investigating what laws here are forcing us to get X amount of signatures? Spending my resources and time getting signatures instead of spending my resources hiring people, knocking on doors, doing my ad thing, holding events, things like that. Why is it that the Green Party in, I don't know, in Michigan or Alabama, I don't know if there's any a Green Party in Alabama, but in states where they have seemingly the same amount of registered party members, especially after this year, or at least close to it, why does the Democratic Party not have to get signatures then? If they have, in states like Alabama, they are the extreme minority. They don't have to get signatures. The Green Party, last time I checked, had well over 1 million people registered to it. So why do they Not, oh, look, Vegan for the Planet said, see, the Green Party in Maine, smart, got ranked choice voting approved because they understood what was causing and that's what I would love the National Level Green Party to do. And then Bernie Sanders actually would have been able to run. But you have to remember, just like every other party that grows powerful, there are always, I don't want to say plants, but people who stand in the way of progress because maybe winning isn't the goal for some of them. Maybe they're there because they know they can take advantage of a system where there is not really any metric to determine what is successful and what isn't at a national level. See, it's only really recently that we've seen people come into the Green Party to win. They got out of the Democratic Party because they got tired of being cheated, and they went into the Green Party to win. And so the attitude has changed a lot at the local levels. I've seen it, like I said. You want to look at Kenneth Mejia, Constance out of Ohio. But when you don't have a party apparatus or that is substantively address election fraud, election reform across the board around the nation, in a plan for how to do that, how can you expect someone to throw everything away for an election that they know they're going to be cheating? I agree with you all. Like, yeah, everybody should vote third party unless Tulsi runs. But everybody should vote third party. Everybody. And yeah, we'll be able to hold people accountable. And I agree 100% with that. Now, from Bernie's perspective, which he's invested his entire life into, making positive changes, he doesn't have time for moral victories. He wants to be president so he can make some legitimate changes, or at least change the culture, or at least pass enough executive orders that we can start doing what we have to do at the local levels and at state levels. So it makes sense. But with California moving themselves up, they think Kamala Harris is going to take over. That's what they think. They think that if they get the right situation, they get the right amount of donors, if they get the right amount of black people to support her, I'm not joking, if they convince the right amount of neoliberals to show up, which, by the way, Kamala Harris makes nobody excited, if they put in enough neoliberal candidates who can pass the delegates on to Kamala later on, then maybe, just maybe, Kamala Harris will set an early precedent, telling the rest of the really, really important states, like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and the like, to vote for her instead of Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard. And they think that's going to work. Mind you, Kamala Harris, even in the polls that are created to favor neoliberals, isn't polling high. But here's what I think is actually going to happen. Like my plan a little bit better. I think that if that is their plan, that's possibly, because they, just in case you don't know, they became part of Super Tuesday. So just to get that out the way. But that's possibly the stupidest plan I have ever heard from the Democratic Party. Because this came from DCCC. By the way, this isn't just for Democrats, by the way. This is for Republicans also. The whole primary process has changed for all parties in that state. But do you understand? Let's take away the idea. We know they're going to try to cheat for Kamala. Like, let's be very, very clear about that. They cheated for Kimberly Ellis. The California, the situation in California is crazy right now. Okay, it's about his establishment and the neoliberal versus the establishment thing is whoo. If you check on some of the interviews and the coverage about their convention, it was very, very controversial. And so they're going to cheat. The progressives are going to fight back. There's going to be arguments, yes. But here's the problem with that whole situation. You're going to allow the state that Kamala Harris came from to vote, right? Do you know what Kamala Harris is known for in that state? Kamala Harris is known for doing things like saving big banks, allowing them to get off scot-free for crimes that they've committed against the people. She's known for backing the prison industrial complex, upping the mandatory minimum, even though recently she just came out and said we need to get rid of or lower the mandatory minimum. She was actively engaged in, she took and takes prison lobbyists' money. Like when Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California, she raised hell, people. And people don't even believe that she legitimately got into the Senate race. Like that, they don't believe that she won that. They think it was bullshit. Can you blame her? But we know what happens during the elections. Come on. You get exposed. So now you're leaving your best candidate. You're hanging her out to dry because let's just say that even if they do cheat, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Cory Booker are all still in the race. And they split the state and she either barely wins or she gets beat because of the black vote being split, because that's where they're going to target, right? Because we know they play identity politics. The black vote gets split by Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. Because they refuse to attack each other. They refuse to address each other's flaws. And the only other person I can really see them voting for is, that's probably it. And a lot of them, the progressives will vote for Bernie Sanders or Tulsi. I think that Tulsi will absolutely obliterate amongst the Asian community and the Desi Arab community, which is, there's a lot of them in California, especially in the bigger cities, in the bigger precincts. So that's going to be a significant notch on her belt. And so I think that potentially Tulsi Gabbard could win California over Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders did just go over there and handle that. He put an ass whooping on Disney while he was over there and had 2 huge rallies. So they still love him. They don't know who the hell Kamala Harris is outside of, damn it, how the hell did she get elected? Why is she representing us? She's not us. That's how they feel about Kamala Harris. But what happens if she gets exposed early and she loses the state that she's representing? That means that you just killed your best chance to convince the world that Kamala Harris is the next rising star in the Democratic Party. And I don't think they understand that. Look, people, we got to take a break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Don't go nowhere. Go and grab a cup of coffee, though. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Be right back. What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for patiently waiting while I got me some coffee and we went on break. Had to wet my whistle a little bit, get everything set up for you guys so that we can continue to have this fantastic conversation. Once again, this broadcast on American Freedom Radio is brought to you by Just Inform. In case you have not, make sure that you go register for the evolution of social media at justinform.com. JUSTNFORM. Also, I did want to give a quick shout out in case you did not hear about this. Sam Ronan was arrested a couple of nights ago around between 12:30 and 1 in the morning. There was no reason explained as to why he was being arrested. He was actually arrested while in his apartment complex. They did not walk up to him and ask for driver's license and registration. In fact, as soon as he got out the car, they yelled at him to get on the ground. They pulled out the taser. They wrestled him. They read him his Miranda rights, but then didn't actually explain what he was being arrested for. And in case there was any disillusion as to whether or not he was just being simply harassed, the charges have been uploaded to the website for his county. I can't remember the name of the website, but it was obstruction of official business. They shouldn't have been there. Obstruction of justice. They shouldn't have been there. And failing to abide by a police signal. And they shouldn't have been there. So those are 3 BS charges that came absolutely out of nowhere. And these are charges that you attach to somebody when you have nothing else to keep them in jail. If you need further proof, tell me what misdemeanors that you know in your state that all have $60,000 bonds attached to them. Yeah. We do have reason to believe that this could be a political targeting. Sam is very active in the Ohio political community and really in the national community as well. He did run for the U.S. House of Representatives for District 1. He also most notably known for running to unseat. Oh, actually, no, she had already been unseated. So running to replace Debbie Wasserman Schultz for the Democratic National Committee chairperson. So, keep him in your thoughts and in your prayers, and definitely be looking out. We're going to try to do a fundraiser for him when he has his arraignment tomorrow. It clearly looks like I said, he was targeted at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, which means they knew that he was going to stay in jail. We still haven't even gotten a solid reason as to why he was even kept there. So we're with you, Sam. Thank you for constantly speaking up about the police state and addressing the corruption in the police state, and because a lot of people won't do that because of what happened to you, because of what you know has happened to even me in the past. So greatly appreciate all the activism you've done there, and I hope that this motivates you when you get out to continue to fight those tough battles. Moving on, there has been an update with net neutrality. Unfortunately for us, it is not one that favors the American people as usual, because today, net neutrality, according to the USA Today, has officially ended. A new set of rules at the Federal Communications Commission went into effect on Monday, ending the previous consumer protections that prevented internet service providers from blocking or slowing legal traffic or charging for faster delivery of some content. It goes on to say that some consumers and tech companies fear that a slower internet and higher costs for broadband delivery will occur because of the repeal. And I think that they have a right to feel that way, because otherwise companies would not have paid Ajit Pai off to get rid of net neutrality. This is probably the one good thing that Obama did that didn't have any strings attached to it, right? So I greatly appreciated that. But unfortunately, Ajit Pai, who was under investigation, and he was the one who introduced this bullshit, because he's under investigation for taking the money from these companies for doing this, and yet it still gets passed, despite the fact that most of the country is for net neutrality. They're still trying to pass this, or they did pass this, I should say, despite the fact that in 20 states, 20 states, respective governors actually made like executive orders to make sure that net neutrality is going to stay intact in their states, or you are not allowed to practice or to conduct business there. Which is fantastic, by the way, because in some states they don't have they don't make a lot of money in those states. They already have enough trouble with jobs and getting jobs there. If you're looking at the Rust Belt, if you're looking at the Midwest, and when they say they're poor, like South Carolina, when they say they're poor, they are not joking. The poorest people in South Carolina don't even, or the poorest people in like New York don't even hold a candle to the poorest people in South Carolina. Good God. Because the cost of living is just so low, but it's because of the quality of living being so low in a lot of areas. And so they can't afford to pay more to do things like watching a movie. And so that could potentially cause mass exodus from different states. If maybe you work from home, maybe there's a lot of things that people do with the internet. I shouldn't have to explain this to you all. I mean, Netflix was a problem, right? We were all a little bit upset about not being able to potentially watch our Netflix shows without paying extra. But I think that this was a move that wasn't to necessarily harm companies like the Netflix of the world, or streaming providers and YouTube. I don't think it was to hurt them. I actually think it was to, I don't think it was to hurt cell phone companies. I actually think it was to help the major cable companies by making it so expensive to leave cable just to stream everything online than it is to actually just buy cable and suck it up. Now, here's where it gets a little bit worse. Cable prices, to a degree, had come down at the very basic levels. Some ways they've gone up, like ESPN now charges to have their channels. But now, if it becomes too expensive to stream at reasonable levels, if it becomes too expensive to watch Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, YouTube, 1080p, I can still raise my prices, offer you one more service like a phone, something to that extent that isn't really that expensive for me, but for you it could potentially be the difference between whether or not you stay paying extra for bandwidth and gigabytes to use, or going to cable where it's cheaper, you get more channels, and you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to be charged per band, for your bandwidth, for getting extra bandwidth. So although it looks like an attack on the consumer, it is an attack on the consumer, but I think it's more so a way to make up for the fact that so many big like the ABCs of the world, pretty much all the major ones, the Disney, the ABC, even Verizon, it was caught paying Ajit. Verizon does have a cable company, by the way. Dish Network, Time Warner, Comcast. Am I missing anybody? CenturyLink. Do they have cable? They do have cable, actually. They have fiber optics. But these major companies, who have been taking a huge hit, I'm sure on demand, all the services that are being significantly. Why do I need on demand? I got YouTube. Why do I need on demand? I got Netflix. Why do I need on demand? Do I really need on demand? Let me just cancel that shit. And then, of course, there are people like my brother and, and my friends, and I'm sure a lot of you have friends too, that literally kept cable, which is the only reason I was ever going to get cable back, but I don't even have it, to watch sports, right? Watch ESPN. It's pretty much why I know a lot of guys have cable. And then ESPN started charging monthly just to have the regular ESPN channel. So then people were like, what the hell? I'll just go to YouTube. I don't even need to see the game live. I go to a bar, have a beer, with my friends. I watch it free there and have a beer. Now what? They're going to pay for it. But now we're not really going to, I can't say for sure what's going to happen with net neutrality because so many states are fighting back. That overcomplicates things for the IP, like for the internet service providers. It overcomplicates things because you're going to have to now invest in monitoring and in codifying that software and that data and those towers for that particular state to match those particular laws, while in the state right beside it, you can do whatever you want to. But if that starts affecting jobs, if it starts affecting the industry, if it starts affecting, people's livelihoods in one form or another, companies start leaving and going to the state beside you because, well, they're upholding net neutrality. However, you are not. Guess what? They're going to still have to deal with net neutrality. That's kind of how it goes. It's kind of like, even though some states legalize marijuana medicinally and some have legalized it federally, they still have to deal with the reality that it is not legal everywhere, right? If you have weed that you got from California and you somehow thought it was a bright idea to bring it into like Oregon, I don't know if they have. Did they make marijuana legal? I don't know. But let's just say they had made. For all intents and purposes, let's just say they have made it legal yet. If you take that into Oregon, you still got to deal with the problems, right? Now, conversely, Oregon or states like Oregon that may be bordering recreational marijuana states have to deal with the monetary issues. Like, why would I stay here if I can go to Colorado and make profit off of that industry? Why would I stay here if I'm a smoker or if I have significant health issues that I feel I want a natural remedy for that marijuana provides? Why would I stay here? I can move to California, I can move to Colorado, I can move to Washington, So when things aren't uniform, and in that, like with marijuana or like what is about to happen with net neutrality, you start seeing certain shifts happen in the market that force industries to adapt no matter what the law says. They can get away with it in certain areas, but it does force them to adapt. So I would be interested in seeing how this is going to develop. Now, I do want to make this clear. This isn't about what you can and can't see. I think that's been a huge misconception about net neutrality. It's not what it means. It is no, it's not that. It isn't like censorship per se. Now, there's a caveat to that. They can make you pay for what you see, which in some ways is indeed censorship. So I guess it is censorship. People will get technical with you and say it's not censorship, but in my opinion, if you're forcing me to pay for something that was once protected by federal law to make sure that we all had even like internet, I should have access to the internet in the same way that I should have access to water. And there are consumer protection laws for like water and electricity and things like that. The internet has become something that is like, it's necessary. You can't really do your job without it. You can't run a company without it. You can't communicate without it. I see some comments about net neutrality. Let's see. So Mr. Fornicate Google on YouTube said that now they can legally block information they don't want you to have. Everyone is missing this point. I could care less about being charged more money. We're being charged our freedom. That's actually a misconception. That's the misconception I was just talking about. They cannot legally block information that they don't want you to see. What you're referring to would be something like what Israel does, China. They can control what you can and can't see online. United States would never, they would never do that. You know how profitable the black market is? Like, like they, you know, remember all those federal laws that you see about people getting, like, hey, don't download all this legal stuff. And every now and then someone would get arrested for it. But like for the most part, we were all like out here like Captain Jack Sparrow pirating everything we could because the black market is very, very profitable. But also it would once again hurt huge stock market companies, like public companies, like the Netflix of the world, like YouTube. It would even affect Google. It would affect it would make way. It would just not be good. It would not be good because people would then, I'm not joking. You don't think the internet is important? You start blocking what people see on the internet and see what happens when people start leaving your country. Because it happens. It does happen, in case you didn't know. Like people leave other countries just to start like YouTube careers, for example, or online like media because like, for example, in, like I was saying, Israel, Facebook can delete your account if you're making any pro-Palestine videos. Yeah, Zionism at its finest. I know. So, what will happen? I can't tell you. Honestly, can't tell you. But I can tell you this. It wasn't done for us. Because most of the country wanted to, I think 70% of the country wanted to make sure that net neutrality stayed intact. And that was across party lines. That wasn't just the left or the right. That was both sides of the fence. Net neutrality in a lot of ways is very reminiscent of TPP. How people across party lines were like, what the hell are you doing with my jabs? I don't know if y'all seen South Park. Big South Park fan. Very political, but a lot of the jokes on South Park, you actually got to be pretty intelligent to get. It's kind of like Family Guy in a lot of ways. One of my favorite episodes, people, is when they make fun of the idea that Mexicans came over to the country and took everybody's jobs. And they like hyper exasperate, like they like use a lot of hyperbole, like saying that like they become the guitars. They became jukeboxes, and it's like everybody's like, oh, I wanted to be a jukebox. And then so they start like having riots, and literally like somebody like ran on a campaign saying that Mexicans took all their jobs, and all the guys were in the background, a country like unfortunately the stereotype of like the rural Republican walk around that, no, they took our jobs, they took our jobs. Like jobs that they would never ever be working in, but they were swearing to God that it was like their fault. And they were like, well, did you do your job correctly? Like are you sure you working these jobs? But anyway, that was just a really funny, like that's kind of like how I felt about TPP. It was like, what you doing with our jobs? Because they were going to take them. Like NAFTA took a shitload of jobs out. TPP was on the way and was going to do the same thing, and that's why so many people across party lines were against it. But we're seeing the same thing right now. So it was damn near, it feels like to me that it's like, shit, we didn't have any say in how we were, well, no, we did get a say. So we were going to get screwed, but the only difference was whether or not we were going to choose KY Warm Sensation or a KY Warm Sensation with the ribbed Trojan condom. Because pretty much we got Hillary, we were actually, I can't even say that we wouldn't have had net neutrality taken away with Hillary. I'm going to be honest with you. But I'm just saying, for what we know, we would have got Hillary, would have got TPP. We would have had a Republican or Trump, we would have lost net neutrality. It's like, yeah, screw you guys. Screw you guys, I'm going home. Nah, but I want to move on. Hopefully we'll get some more positive news about net neutrality going forward, but it's not looking pretty, people. So I want to cover this article from the RT that came out. Some of you may not be surprised. Some of you may be very surprised. Me, I'm in the former. Because nothing about the U.S. government being involved in potential regime change is at all surprising. And in this particular article, I've already explained to people, I used to be in the military, but probably not more importantly, but what's helped me shape my understanding of how our military is used, believe it or not, is growing up in the military environment. You see a lot of things that when you get, now that I'm at my age and I know a lot more about the world, and I know a lot more about how the U.S. military is pretty much used as a fucking sovereign mercenary group, you start seeing things and you start relating things, and then you just stop being surprised by things. So RT reported today that U.S. Special Forces helping the FSA plot chemical attacks to trigger strikes on Syria forces, according to Russian intelligence. Now, if you're in the camp that thinks that Russia today is somehow a propaganda machine in some way, form, or fashion, I would say I see your Russia today, and I raise you a CNN, a Washington Post, a New York Times, Breitbart, I mean, we can go on for days, Fox News. So do they have vested interest? I remember my friend Samir Khan, who works for RT America, said, yeah, they do have a clear interest, and that is exposing American imperialism for the murderous warmongering machine that it is. So yeah, but even if they are, all the facts would make me tend to lean towards that this is probably true. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about why that is in a second. But first, I want to get back to the article. So Russia's defense ministry said that it has credible intelligence that U.S. Special Forces are helping Syrian rebels orchestrate a chemical attack provocation using chlorine to provoke Western airstrikes on Syrian government forces. Now, this came out today. This is breaking news. Our intelligence, and this is the Russian ministry talking. Our intelligence, confirmed by 3 independent Syrian sources, says that commanders of the so-called Free Syrian Army, backed by American Special Forces operators, are preparing a serious provocation involving chemical warfare agents in Azor province, and the military allege that the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, militants are likely to employ a chlorine strike to orchestrate a chemical incident. To imitate yet another chemical attack by the regime against peaceful civilians, the rebels brought canisters filled with chlorine. This is according to the defense ministry. So the setup could then be distributed in Western media and serve as yeah, we know how this shit goes. This broke today. And yeah, I believe it 100%. Okay? I want you all to understand something. Do you all remember when Trump tried to pull out CIA from Syria? Do you all remember? Seriously, do y'all remember? It wasn't that long ago. The first time. Last year. Let's say about April time frame. About April. Actually, I think it was a little bit after April. I think it was May, maybe? Yeah, between April and May. But he pulled out the CIA. All of us, the progressives, the conservatives, the anti-war, isolationist conservatives, all of us were celebrating. Because we were like, whoa, was not expecting that. And I was very clear in saying they're definitely going to stomp this shit out. Because that's a bold move. Like a really bold move. You're pretty much spitting in the face of the entire deep state. Not just the deep state in the American government, but the deep state across the world who are invested in these, at the very bare minimum, invested in the pipelines that are supposed to be going through Syria. So what happened shortly after that, people? You all remember. We launched the airstrike on Syria after a chemical attack happened right after. But I'm sure that was just coincidence, though. So let's fast forward. As you all know, a couple of months ago, not even a couple of months ago, I think. Well, no, actually, I think at this point it was almost literally 2 months ago. Another situation happened. Said, hey, Donald Trump is actually in an open quarrel with his administration about pulling out of Syria completely. Two things came to mind. Awesome. Glad that he's going to pull out for sure this time. Second thing came to mind. You are the commander-in-chief of the United States military. Why the hell don't you just pull him out? You can do that. That's your thing. You can do it. Boom. Just like that, you pull him out. Hell, George Bush did and put him in, so you can do and pull him out. You can't declare war, but you can pull him out. You can surge troops up to a certain amount, but that's his prerogative. At least that's what we thought, because he is a commander-in-chief. But he was in an open conflict with his administration about pulling out. Why? What was, mind you, Mad Dog Mattis even said, yeah, we have no proof of the chemical weapons attacks that happened that caused us to launch a slew of rockets at a Russian military base that did indeed take innocent lives, in case you didn't know. It did. That first time. Second time, I'm actually in the camp that I don't think that a lot of people are in, where I think that Donald Trump actually did not believe that we committed Syria attacks. I think that he gaslighted a little bit. He put on a show. I think that he and Trump, I think that he and Putin do talk, not for the reasons that the Democrats would have you believe. I think that Trump understands what the Democrats have how they've tried to demonize Putin. Putin is not perfect, but I do not consider him uniquely worse than any leader that we have had over the last 70 years outside of Jimmy Carter and JFK. So like, I don't consider him like uniquely horrible. Like, if the worst thing he did was rig an election, well, welcome to the Democratic Party, and welcome to the Republican Party. Like, I don't know what you want to, like, they both rig elections. So did he commit? Like, did he commit? You know, did he push any racial legislation or racial policies? Well, welcome to American political parties again. They're like, oh, he hated gays. Welp. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is, he had political opponents arrested. See Sam Ronan, running U.S. District, Ohio, U.S. Congressional District out of Ohio, currently in jail. C. Ray McGovern, recently just arrested for speaking out. Like, the things that they claim about Vladimir Putin, they're like, their election is a kangaroo court or a banana republic. See United States elections. I don't know the things that they try to use to separate the things that Putin does from the things that they do, not good examples because you do it. So I can just be, I'm not, I kind of am. I'm kind of like neutral to the judgment of Putin because I know how much our propaganda affects our outlook on Russia and Russians in general. The same way our propaganda affects how we see Iranians, people from Syria, from Iraq, like we view them in a different light than we view like Venezuelan refugees who come here because of what we're doing in their country. And that's propaganda. We attach the Islam to this, we attach radical Islam to everything. Even in Syria, that's a secular nation, because we created radical Islam. So propaganda has been inherent in foreign policy in America for 7 to 8 decades at this point. So no, I'm not just going to blindly believe what America tells me about anybody abroad. With that being said, I think that Trump coordinated a BS attack that Syria could easily defend itself from, attacking a bunch of empty buildings to see who was going to try to force him to launch before an investigation, to see who was going to try to tell him that a chemical attack had happened, that they had absolute proof, that they were absolutely sure, that on the ground sources have confirmed it, and lie to him to get him to instigate it. And that way he could expose them going forward. And if that is true, once again, which I wouldn't really be surprised, because I think, I'm not going to lie, like the ongoing joke and the ongoing accusations from the neoliberal side of the world is that, yeah, you know who his presidential advisor is. He's a Putin puppy. Putin is his advisor. I actually think that Putin is advising him on foreign policy to a degree. Not on everything, but in Syria, because Trump does not want to escalate with Russia. Because that means China's getting involved. Which means North Korea gets involved, which means South Korea gets involved, which means we go to war if we go to war with Russia. Because that means Iran starts taking out the big guns. That means every regime that we've ever pissed off join. I mean, it would not be pretty. And Trump knows that. It would be an unwinnable war for us. It would either be that or a nuclear winter. So, but it was, once again, a chemical attack that took place right after it was announced that Trump was in open conflict with his administration about pulling out of Syria. Want more proof, or you want more anecdotal evidence? Being raised for so long in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is the city right outside of Fort Bragg, being raised around special forces, having family in special forces. If anybody out there have family in special forces, and I know a few of my friends, like currently, their dad, one of them, actually no, I think all their dads have just retired. Just retired, actually. You start there, you recall seeing these paintings, these rugs, these items and money from Libya. But not everybody had it though. Only special forces did. I distinctly remember the converse, like the like, it was like celebratory language written on the paintings. If it was a pro Gaddafi painting, and then like the paintings that were painted by the rebellion were like really bad. You know. But I didn't put two and two together. I had no idea what the hell Libya was when I was a kid, clearly. But now we know that we were heavily involved in the demise of Gaddafi. We know that a lot of what we heard about what was going on in Libya was propaganda. We know that the government, the Chadian government that we were working with, or the president of Chad that we were working with at that time, has been brought up on a ridiculous amount of corruption charges and has come out and said that he was working on behalf of the United States of America. All the major problems that they were claiming were coming out of Chad as a result of Gaddafi trying to raise hell across the border was a lie. It was coming from a hyper-religious, super right-wing dictator that we installed and tried to use to unseat Gaddafi. We have been trying to take over Libya from what I know since the 80s. And when Gaddafi and the African Union, which most of you all never learn about because the last thing that this world wants to do ever is humanize African countries. God forbid that happens. But there is an African Union. They're pretty damn strong, by the way. But when the African Union and Gaddafi agreed, which, by the way, Gaddafi was the elected chairperson of. The elected. They liked Gaddafi. He wasn't perfect, but they did like him. He said he was going to step down so that the West can stay the hell out of Africa. And wouldn't you believe it? Wouldn't you believe it? As soon as he said that, literally months later, they killed him. They were like, oh no. Because that was going to bring stability to the region. That was going to, like, he was going to allow someone else to step up. They were going to have a legitimate election. They were going to, you know, sign peace treaties and all that good stuff. And the United States, you have to understand, you notice that we talk about regime change a lot. We always talk about that guy. We always focus on the name of the person that we have to get out of power. But you know what we don't talk about often? Who the hell comes into power next? You don't ever hear about their names, do you? And oftentimes you don't hear about who was in charge before that particular person came into power. Because I'm going to tell you a little secret. This is on me. This is a free one for you. When they don't talk about who came into power before the person they won't shut the hell up about, it's because we put them in power. Or at the very bare minimum, they were working for us. A good example of that would be the Batista regime from Cuba. Batista was highly regarded by the Communist Party because of his ties to the United States sugar cartel that was going on in Cuba. Why do you think it was so easy for Fidel to take over the Batista regime while simultaneously never being taken out of power? When people there was never an attempted major revolution in Cuba. I wonder why. Maybe because he was trying to desegregate. But weirdly enough, the guy who was trying to desegregate Cuba during the time that we were segregated still, the guy who fought on behalf of Nelson Mandela while we fought on behalf of the apartheid. In fact, we taught them how to apartheid, people. We taught them how to apartheid it. We the apartheid original creators. Whose businesses do you think were profiting off of the land during the apartheid and even until very recently during the 2000s? United States. Come on, people. That's what we don't talk about, Batista. I'll give you another example. We don't ever hear about Maurice. Y'all know about the Grenada situation, right? That's like it's a very famous painting. It's like blue. It symbolizes a bunch of bombs being dropped on this little city, or little island, really. We killed a guy named Maurice Bishop there. We attacked him. We were launching out of Trinidad. To my understanding, that was when we were island hopping. I don't know if you noticed, but like pretty much all of the Bahamas, all of the Caribbean, they're colonized in one form or another, and Grenada was not very different from that. And also that was those are huge trade routes, and that's like not NAFTA territory, but kind of like NAFTA territory. Like the tourist industries in these countries are owned almost exclusively by the United States, like the Puerto Ricos of the world. So there was a guy named Maurice Bishop wanted to desegregate Grenada and wanted to work with other people across the world to end desegregation. Believed in universal health care. Believed more than anything in fighting American imperialism. We killed him. Yep, we killed him. Said he was a communist, as we usually do. And what they don't talk about is who came after him, which was a right-wing dictator who maintained office for 15 years and was, for all intents and purposes, very cruel. We didn't do shit to him, to the guy who came next. We had to get Libya. Like, we had to get Gaddafi, right? Had to get Gaddafi. Had to. Libya's in chaos. We want to protect everybody. Libya, you thought Libya was in chaos before. Libya is in a lot of chaos right now. They don't talk about these things because we're involved. So some regime change is because we're trying to unseat a quote unquote dictator, quote unquote. But a lot of regime change, like for example, the war in Iraq, we were working with Saddam Hussein. We had no problem working with Saddam Hussein when we were giving him Agent Orange, which he then subsequently used on American soldiers, which is why we have to get jacked up with so many vaccines. Like, people, you gotta do some research, but yeah, at least 200,000 soldiers were exposed to the radiation that we were using from depleted uranium in Iraq and Agent Orange that was used on us. But you all may know it as anthrax. Yeah, that was us. That was us. It was all those conspiracy theories about it being created by the government. That's so silly. No, it was us. We gave it to Iraq. That's how it got back over here. Soldiers were bringing it back. So once again, we have another example, another clear example of we only care about regime change whenever you don't do what we want you to do. And we're very, very selective about the attention we bring to certain countries and certain regimes. Which is why they never talk about Yemen, right? Oh, what? Oh, can you believe they're using chemical attacks in Syria? Well, yeah, Saudi Arabia just used chemical attacks in Yemen. But Syria though. Like, those are kids and women and children. And yeah, but there are parts of Yemen that haven't had power in literally months. I think in some areas like years. Yeah, but hey, you need to check that evil guy Assad out. Look at him. Looking all nefarious. Looking like a damn evil genius with that suit and that tie thing that he has going on and that really fresh haircut and his beautiful wife with a really nice smile who doesn't seem like she would be with somebody that's really nefarious, and driving that Honda Civic of doom through Damascus where his people supposedly hate him and despise him, but he doesn't get touched or approached. Because, you know, all dictators who are super cocky wear nice, well-cut suits and address the public regularly and ask for proof of things that you claim that they do, like commit war crimes. And, you know, they wear that type of stuff instead of wearing a bunch of like where you get the damn, I can't remember what the name of the thing. Oh, awards. Yeah, they gave themselves awards, and they have like 50,000 badges on, and those are like egotists. Those are really egotists. I would be quicker to believe that they're probably closer to dictatorship than Assad, who walks around in a damn black suit and a high and tight haircut, is. The guy who literally was like just an ophthalmologist, excuse me. But let's pay attention to Assad while Saudi Arabia does the exact same. No, excuse me. Not the exact same thing. There's no proof of what Assad has done. The entire international community knows what Saudi Arabia has done to Yemen. There's no proof of what Assad has been claimed to have done. But Israel isn't even denying the fact that they killed 50 people, innocent people with no weapons, with sniper fire because of a fucking protest. But let's focus on Assad. Why am I saying all this? Because, once again, people, not only do I believe this story where the Russian Defense Ministry is claiming that the U.S. Special Forces are helping plan attacks, you would be hard-pressed to convince me otherwise. That is a default thought in my mind. It is default. Damn, what's going on over there in Syria? Man, shit. We over there training soldiers to rebels and terrorists to kill the innocent people fighting for their country as usual. Why would I think it's any different? It's the same thing we've always done. What do you think IED stands for? I know you've heard that word over and over and over and over and over again, right? IED, or that acronym. It just stands for improvised explosive device. Do you think these rebels and these terrorists got improvised explosive device like techniques off of Mount Everest University, online, ITT Tech? No. The United States Special Forces trained them to make improvised explosive devices when Iraq, specifically in that situation, and even Afghanistan, but really both, but with Iraq mostly, Iraq used to be on our side. And then they weren't on our side anymore. If I can recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was because we were trying to unseat the Ayatollah, and then Iraq decided they wanted to invade Kuwait, oil. That pissed off Saudi Arabia, who you cannot piss off, because that is the one country I think we would back Saudi Arabia before we backed Israel. Like, that's how much we are invested, or that we rely on them for our economy because of just because of it being based off the petrodollar. So we trained people to create IEDs that they then used against us. Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset, a member of the Saudi royal family. We trained him. We trained his people. And then Al-Qaeda attacked us overseas. Do you see the pattern here? They end up with our weapons. How do you think they get the weapons? And we dehumanize them with propaganda by, like, we pretend like we ain't kill 1 million Iraqis. But we say, today we got another group of insurgents. It was a very successful mission. What's an insurgent? Let's look up the definition of an insurgent real quick. I really want to know what they mean. Because I know how they used it, but I don't know I don't know if it means the same thing to them as it does to me at this point. So we're going to find out what insurgent means real quick. Because they throw that word around. They throw it around so casually. And as much as they've said the word or the phrase like, oh yeah, we took down a group of insurgents. We ain't killed that many terrorists. Based off the numbers, we ain't killed that many terrorists. But we killed like 1 million Iraqis. And it sounds like insurgent starting to just mean civilian at this point. But the definition of insurgent is a rebel or revolutionary. So by definition, really, they technically are correct, because if you're at all rebelling against American imperialism and you're overseas, you're technically an insurgent. But it sounds a lot better to say insurgent than we just killed a 10-year-old boy who had a gun in his hand because we walked into his house during a breach and clear and killed his father without actually explaining why we killed him. And we use the fact that he had a gun as justification for it. But everybody in Iraq has a gun because, well, it was Iraq. And that's kind of what happens in Iraq. So it's a lot easier to say insurgent than we killed a 10-year-old boy trying to protect his family after we killed the dad. Propaganda, 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 propaganda. Everywhere. Everywhere we freaking look is propaganda. And then somebody would try to tell you that this article saying that U.S. Special Forces is helping to create chemical attacks in Syria to instigate the United States going into war is clearly propaganda from Russia bots. Once again, I would be impressed if you could convince me otherwise. I would be impressed if you could convince me otherwise. We have more proof that this is reality than anything else. This is a conspiracy theory. Okay? This isn't... No, it's not comfortable. It sucks. Understanding and finally coming to the realization that the United States, if you watch, for example, Star Wars, okay? If you watch Star Wars, we're the Empire. Hillary Clinton and Darth Vader. And Henry Kissinger is absolutely the Emperor, okay? Right, I think we all agree with that. If you watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, we are the Fire Nation. We lie to people, say we're out there. If you ever seen the episode, I strongly urge you to look it up, by the way. There's an episode where the Fire Nation, or the Avatar, goes into a classroom and he's confused because they're going over fun facts. And he's like, we spread, the Fire Nation came to a peace offering with the Buddhists, who would be the airbenders, and that's why you don't see them fighting each other. And then the airbenders are like, because he was one of them. He was like, no, the Fire Nation wiped them out. What are you talking about? And everybody in class was like, what? That's a lie. And the entire class had no idea that their country was holding proxy wars all over the world. They thought they were just like, I don't know, but they didn't think that they were doing that. And then what happens is you get in the military, and then you get told about this conflict. You're just keeping the situation under control. Then you get told about that conflict. We're just keeping the situation under control. So that's it for today, people. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And always remember, more than anything else, as usual, find your balance. Peace.